He bought the first-class ticket. She assumed he didn't belong. What happened after landing? She'll never forget. They say you can tell a lot about a person by how they treat someone they think can't do anything for them. And on that early morning in Phoenix, someone made a mistake that would cost them their entire career. It was just past 6:15 a.m. at Sky Harbor International Airport. The sun was barely up, and the gate was already packed with half-asleep passengers, earbuds in, neck pillows on, waiting to board Flight 782 to Newark. A direct, 5-hour trip, cross-country. Darius Remy Langston walked into the gate area in silence. Navy sport coat, pressed jeans, carry-on in hand. Nothing flashy, just clean and intentional. He didn't walk like a man with something to prove. He walked like a man with somewhere to be. He stopped briefly, double-checked the gate number on his phone, then walked over to the first-class priority line. Group 1 had just started boarding. "Morning," he said to the gate agent, a polite nod. She didn't say anything back, just scanned his ticket with a little too much tension in her wrist. He noticed, but didn't react. He stepped onto the jet bridge, the soft whir of the engines outside, muted by the hallway's industrial hum. A quick smile to the attendant at the plane's door. 1A, he said casually as he entered. But as he approached the first row, a flight attendant, blonde, probably in her early 40s, sharp cheekbones, tight bun, stepped directly in front of him, arms folded, smile tight. "Sir, first class is for premium passengers only," she said. Darius blinked, confused. "I know, this is my seat, 1A. He held up his boarding pass. The print was clear, large, and unmistakable. She took the paper, gave it a quick glance, then handed it back without really looking at it. "There must be a mistake," she said. "You should be in main cabin plus. Let me help you find your seat." He tilted his head slightly, not in anger, not in disbelief, just measured calm. "No, ma'am. I booked this ticket myself. First class, round trip." She sighed through her nose, not enough for a scene, just enough to let him know she didn't believe him. "Sir, we've had issues with duplicate seat bookings before. Please step aside while we sort it out." "Sort what out?" His voice didn't rise, but there was weight in it. "That's my name, that's my seat. If there's an issue, I'm happy to wait until the plane is full and we can speak with a supervisor." Other passengers were watching now, some of them in first class, others still trickling in. Most kept their heads down. One man in a tie briefly looked up from his tablet, then went right back to it. The attendant didn't move. "Please take a seat in the back. We'll figure this out once everyone is boarded." Darius stared at her for a beat too long. Not a threat, not even a warning, just silence. Then, without a word, he turned and walked slowly toward the rear of the plane. He passed by rows of tired faces, eyes that didn't want to get involved, whispers. A few people gave that look, the kind where you know they saw what happened but weren't about to say anything. Row 27, middle seat, a crying toddler behind him, elbow to elbow with two strangers. He sat down, not because he had to, but because he chose to. And that was where she made her second mistake. But just because someone stays quiet doesn't mean they don't hear everything. "Can you believe that?" The man to Darius's left muttered under his breath. Flannel shirt, big hands. Looked like he worked with them too. Darius glanced over. "Excuse me?" "I saw what they did. Up front. That was messed up, man. You had a first-class ticket?" "Yeah." "Figures." The man shook his head. "Wouldn't happen to me. I mean, look at me." He chuckled, half apologetically, half sarcastically. Darius gave a slight smile but didn't say much else. He looked straight ahead. It wasn't the first time something like this had happened, but it had been a while. He thought he was past this kind of thing. He'd built a company from a desk in his garage to one with offices in 4 states. Closed deals over steak dinners with men who used to ignore his emails, sat across from billionaires who once asked him if he was with the tech team. And now, here he was, being told he didn't belong in a seat he paid for. The captain's voice came over the speaker. "Good morning, folks. Welcome aboard Flight 782, service from Phoenix to Newark. Estimated flight time is 5 hours and 3 minutes. Weather looks smooth. Sit back, relax, and we'll be off shortly." The plane pushed back. The flight attendants moved through the aisles, checking belts and bags, and she was back. The same woman from before. She didn't look at Darius as she passed by, but he watched her. Not out of spite, just clarity. Observation. She stopped 2 rows ahead, chatting and laughing with another passenger. Older man, white hair, suit still crisp despite the early hour. He showed her a card, some kind of loyalty status. "Oh, Mr. Halberstam," she said with that performative warmth. "Always a pleasure. If there's anything I can do for you during the flight, just say the word." She didn't know she was still being watched, but Darius saw every moment, every choice. Half an hour later, drinks started rolling out. He declined. So did the guy next to him. The toddler behind them kicked his seat again. No one said anything. Darius pulled out his phone, opened his secure app. There was no signal yet, but he typed out a quick note anyway. "Confirm ops control by 2 p.m. EST, staff eval on 782 complete." He saved it, put the phone face down on the tray. It wasn't a threat. It was just time. What the crew didn't know, what no one knew, was that this flight wasn't just a ride to a business meeting. It was the final piece of a merger Darius had been quietly orchestrating for 8 months. His company, Relocation, had just acquired full operational oversight of Volair Regional, the airline that ran this very flight under a major carrier's name. He hadn't even planned to be on this flight. His team had offered to send the lawyers, but he insisted. Not because he wanted control, because he wanted clarity, and now he had it. Back up in first class, seat 1A stayed empty. Midway through the flight, the flannel shirt guy tapped his shoulder. "Hey man, if you want to switch seats, I'll take the middle for a bit, give you some room." Darius looked over. "That's kind of you, but I'm good." "You sure? You've been quiet this whole time." "I've had a lot to think about." "Yeah?" He chuckled. "You one of those stock guys or something?" Darius smiled. "Something like that." "Cool, cool. Bet you make more than all of us back here combined." He didn't respond, just leaned back and closed his eyes for a moment. But things were already moving, and by the time they landed, everything would be different. 7 years earlier, Darius was sweating through the collar of a polyester button-up in a cramped office above a laundromat in Tempe, Arizona. No AC, just a rattling box fan that did more complaining than cooling. He was 29, fresh off a failed pitch to a group of angel investors who spent the entire meeting asking who built the product, even though he'd already told them twice that he had. "That's impressive," one of them had said, voice thick with surprise. "Didn't expect that." Darius had smiled through his teeth. Back then, Relocation wasn't even Relocation. It was just a prototype and a name scribbled on a post-it. A workflow automation tool built from scratch. Code, design, UI, back-end, every line his own. The kind of thing big companies would pay good money for if they believed the person behind it had the credibility, or the right connections, or, let's be real, the right look. He worked nights at a 24-hour FedEx hub to make rent, ate gas station sandwiches more times than he could count, slept on a twin mattress on the floor of a 2-bedroom he shared with an old college buddy, and 3 roaches they never could get rid of. But he kept building. Not because he thought he'd get rich. He just wanted to own something, to not have to beg someone for the chance to prove he was smart. He was tired of being congratulated for being well-spoken and surprisingly technical. Then came the break. A mid-sized logistics firm in Dallas. One of their junior managers found Darius's tool online, gave it a shot on a small project, and productivity shot up 19% in 3 weeks. Word spread. More teams adopted it. And suddenly, Darius was getting flown out to meetings in places he'd never heard of. He never bragged, never changed his tone, always showed up early, always listened more than he spoke. But behind that quiet smile was a man who had been doubted his entire life, and who had taken every one of those doubts and built something solid with it. By the time Relocation signed a $9.6 million annual deal with a shipping giant in Memphis, Darius had his pick of investors, not the ones from before. No, those guys came crawling back. He declined their calls. Instead, he brought on a handful of sharp, diverse, hungry people like himself. People who knew what it meant to be underestimated. People who didn't just want a paycheck, they wanted purpose. And it worked. Revenue doubled every year for 4 years straight. They acquired 2 small competitors, then 1 mid-tier regional tech firm. Then came the big play. An airline's regional division, Volair. Bleeding money, terrible internal systems, but fixable and strategic. Darius saw the opportunity and went all in. He and his CFO structured the deal quietly, buying it under a shell management group to avoid headlines. Only a few people even knew the name Remitech was behind it, which made today's flight even more poetic. The same company that once wouldn't return his calls was now partly under his control. And they had no idea he was sitting in 27B, knees jammed against the seat in front of him, being treated like a fraud. He wasn't angry. He was focused. There's something powerful about knowing who you are, even when no one else does, especially when they make it clear they don't care to find out. But knowing isn't enough. You still have to choose what to do with it. An hour into the flight, the seatbelt sign blinked off with a soft chime. Most passengers took that as permission to shift around, stretch, head to the bathroom. Darius didn't move. He reached under the seat, pulled out his laptop, and opened a secure folder labeled Ops Merge, Tier 1 only. His fingers moved slowly. This wasn't about typing speed, it was about control. The screen showed the integration checklist. One section stood out. Personnel Conduct Audit, Random Sample Evaluation. He clicked it. The airline hadn't officially announced the acquisition yet, but Darius's team had begun embedding quiet oversight into select routes. Flight 782 was one of them. Every staff member on that plane, from the flight attendants to the maintenance lead, was already listed in an internal review system. He pulled up a profile. Rhonda M. Wilkes, flight attendant status, temporary hold pending review. Notes, prior passenger complaints, documented discrepancies in service logs. Darius stared at the screen for a long second. His face didn't move, not even a twitch. He minimized the window and opened a text chat in the internal ops system. Darius, Remitech. Need full incident logging for 782. Cabin crew interaction, 5:55 a.m. PST to 6:20 a.m. PST. Forward to legal and HR East Coast. Ops admin, Julia C. Already compiling. We'll loop in comms once review doc is done. Do you want this escalated now or wait until touchdown? Darius, ground team meets the plane in Newark. Quietly, no media, no noise. Professional tone only. Ops admin, understood. Final report by 2:30 Eastern. He closed the laptop. The man in flannel next to him leaned over slightly. Work never ends, huh? Darius glanced over. Not really. You look like the kind of guy who runs something. No offense. None taken. You in tech? Something like that. Yeah, my cousin's kid is learning that stuff. Coding or whatever. Big money in it. You must be doing all right. Darius didn't answer that. He didn't need to. The flight attendant, Rhonda, walked down the aisle again. She passed Darius without a word. Didn't ask if he needed anything. Didn't even pretend to check on that row. But she stopped 2 rows up. Same voice. Same artificial warmth. And how's the coffee, Mr. Halberstam? Still hot enough? He nodded. She patted his shoulder lightly. Let me know if you need a refill. Darius looked at the back of her head, a quiet, careful stare. This wasn't about coffee. It never was. 10 minutes later, a different attendant came by. Young guy, maybe mid-20s. He looked nervous. Sir, he said, low. Mr. Langston? Darius looked up. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry about earlier. I saw what happened, and I should have said something. I didn't know who you were, but even if I didn't... Darius held up a hand, not dismissively, just to stop him. What's your name? He asked. Brent. Brent, let me ask you something. If I wasn't who I am, would you still be apologizing? The kid blinked. I think so, yeah. Darius nodded. Then keep doing that. Quiet integrity matters. Brent stood there for a second, unsure whether to leave or stay. Go ahead, Darius said. And thank you. He left. Darius returned to his thoughts, eyes closed, breathing steady. Every company had people like Rhonda. People who assumed authority meant they didn't have to answer to anyone. People who thought humility was weakness. But power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it sits in coach. Sometimes it waits. But waiting doesn't mean doing nothing. It means choosing the right moment to act. The wheels hit the tarmac in Newark just after 2:11 p.m. The usual announcements played, half heard over the chorus of seatbelts clicking and passengers stretching like they hadn't moved in weeks. Phones came out, heads tilted down, emails resumed. Darius didn't reach for his bag. He just sat there, calm, eyes forward. He watched Rhonda through the crack between the seats. She was already back in performative mode, thanking first-class passengers by last name as they filed out, smiling wide enough to crack porcelain. The pilot came out too, standing near the cockpit door. "Thanks for flying," he repeated to each person, tone robotic, rehearsed. He gave Darius a passing glance, but didn't speak. From row 27, it was a slow shuffle forward. Darius let others pass him. No rush. The man in flannel gave him a friendly nod as he left. "Good flying with you, boss man. Hope they treat you better next time." Darius gave a tight smile. "Hope you get that middle seat back." They both chuckled. Finally, he stepped into the aisle. He didn't rush. Each step forward was quiet, steady, measured. Seat 1A was still empty. As he passed it, he glanced at Rhonda. She didn't even recognize him, too busy prepping her fake grin for the next wave of passengers. That was the third mistake. At the front of the jet bridge, two sharply dressed people stood near the gate. Clipboards, earpieces. One woman, one man. Mid-30s, polished, serious. Not airline staff, corporate. They didn't make a scene. The man leaned into the gate agent, showed an ID badge, whispered something quietly. The woman gestured subtly toward the plane door, and waited. Inside, the flight crew started to move. Rhonda was first out, still talking to another flight attendant, laughing at something that wasn't funny. She stopped cold. The two corporate reps were standing directly in front of her now. "Ms. Wilkes?" the woman said, calm, polite. "Yes? We need to speak with you privately, please. Right this way." "Wait, what? About what?" The man didn't answer, just extended an open hand, motioning toward a side hallway off the gate. Passengers were still trickling out behind them. No one was yelling. No one knew what was happening. But Rhonda's smile dropped like a curtain. "I don't understand. Why me?" "You'll be fully briefed," the woman said gently. "This won't take long." The rest of the crew looked confused, some frozen, others pretending not to notice. One of them glanced back toward the plane, and that's when Rhonda saw him, Darius, still standing just inside the jet bridge, bag over his shoulder, watching, not with anger, not with pride, just clarity, recognition. She blinked, confused. "Wait, who are you?" He stepped forward once, closed the gap between them by just enough to be heard over the airport noise. "You should have just looked at the ticket." Her mouth opened slightly. No words came. Then the man from corporate cleared his throat. "This way, Ms. Wilkes." They led her off. The remaining passengers moved past, none the wiser. A few gave Darius curious glances, like they'd missed something important. And they had. But this wasn't for them. He finally stepped out into the gate area. The air smelled like stale pretzels and carpet cleaner. He paused, looked around, and saw one of his regional managers waiting discreetly by a coffee kiosk. He walked over. "Mr. Langston," the man said, "it's done. We've got full documentation. HR has all interviews scheduled. No press involvement as requested." "Good," Darius said. "Do you want to handle the follow-up yourself?" "No," he said. "Keep it internal. Make it clean. No theater." The man nodded. "You headed to the hotel?" "In a bit," Darius replied. "Let me breathe first." The manager left. Darius stood there a moment longer. Not tired, just still. He pulled out his phone and checked a message. Acquisition confirmed. Transition phase begins. He smiled just barely. But power handled loudly is ego. Power handled quietly is strategy. Somewhere down the hall, in a tucked-away conference room near Gate 43, Rhonda Wilkes sat with a glass of lukewarm water shaking slightly in her hand. Her ID badge was still clipped to her uniform, but the lanyard felt tighter around her neck now. Across the table sat two HR specialists from the airline's East Coast corporate office, along with an observer from Remitech's internal compliance team, an older black woman named Nadine Foster. She didn't say much, just listened, took notes, let the silence do its work. Rhonda shifted in her seat. I don't understand what's happening. Is this about something on the flight?" The HR woman nodded. "We've been reviewing your conduct on Flight 782. Several passengers reported a concerning interaction. We also received a directive for immediate evaluation from Remitech's executive team." "Remitech?" Rhonda said, confused. "That's not the airline." Nadine finally looked up. "Not directly, but they now manage the operations of all Volair regional flights, including yours." The words hit different. You could see it in Rhonda's face. The color drained a little. Her voice cracked. Wait, are you saying this is about that man? The one who sat in coach? No, Nadine said plainly. This is about you and your choices. Rhonda sat back, blinked. I thought he was trying to sneak up front. We get that all the time. People with standby tickets pretending they got bumped up. You didn't even check the system, Nadine said, flipping to a printout. You saw a black man in plain clothes and decided he didn't belong. That's not fair. No, Nadine said, firm now. What's not fair is a man paying thousands for a seat he wasn't allowed to sit in because someone refused to see him as legitimate. What's not fair is being humiliated in front of strangers when you did everything right. Rhonda looked down at her hands. You weren't just rude, the HR rep added. You escalated a situation that never needed to be one. And it's not your first complaint. We've been more than patient. So what now? Rhonda asked, her voice small. You'll be suspended without pay pending full review. A final decision will be made in 72 hours, the HR woman said. Rhonda didn't argue. She didn't have anything left to say. Back near baggage claim, Darius stood in line for a rideshare like everyone else. No black car, no security escort, just a man in a clean jacket with a tired carry-on. The car pulled up, a silver Hyundai, driven by an older Ethiopian man named Mulu. They exchanged polite hellos, then rode in silence for the first few miles. Eventually, the driver glanced in the rearview mirror. Business trip? Something like that, Darius replied. You fix the company or break it? Darius chuckled softly. Bit of both, I guess. The driver nodded, satisfied. Sometimes both is needed. Darius looked out the window as the skyline came into view. Newark wasn't much to look at, but today it felt like something had been set right. Not because someone got punished, but because accountability, for once, didn't get lost in the shuffle. He thought back to all the times he'd been followed in stores, ignored in meetings, mistaken for the intern when he was leading the room. This wasn't revenge. It was course correction. It was proof that one quiet move in the right place could ripple further than any public fight. And the thing was, he hadn't even used his name. No press release, no viral video, just presence. But presence backed by principle is what really shifts the room. The hotel room was quiet, no TV, no music, just the low hum of the AC and the slow, steady rhythm of a man finally at rest. Darius sat on the edge of the bed, jacket off, shirt sleeves rolled halfway up. His laptop sat open on the desk behind him, the cursor blinking on a new document he hadn't started yet. He wasn't in a rush to write anything. Instead, he stared out the window. 15th floor. The city below looked like any other. Gray buildings, honking cars, people walking fast and looking down. Same world, different lens. He thought about his father, used to drive city buses in Glendale. The man worked double shifts and still came home with grease on his knuckles and a joke ready. He didn't talk much about racism, didn't complain about it either, but Darius remembered the time they got pulled over just because his dad rolled through a yellow light in a nicer part of town. Some folks need to remind you where they think you belong, his dad said as they drove off. Don't let them be the ones who decide. That stuck with him. All these years later, it still sat in his chest like an anchor. And maybe that's what today was about. It wasn't just about Rhonda. It wasn't about one rude moment on a plane. It was about the thousands of quiet dismissals people like him had endured. The way success didn't buy you immunity. How your worth still got measured in fragments. How you dressed, how you spoke, where you sat. But today, the story ended differently. Not with a viral clip. Not with shouting. Not with security dragging someone off a plane. No hashtags, no headlines. Just accountability and clarity. He finally turned back to the laptop, typed a simple internal memo to his team. Reminder, leadership is not about showing power. It's about knowing when to use it and when not to. He hit send, then leaned back in his chair. Whatever happened next, the people in charge of tomorrow's flights would think twice before treating anyone like they were invisible. And maybe that's what real power is. Not fear, not ego, but the ability to walk through the fire calm, steady, and on your own terms, and then leave the door open behind you for someone else to walk through. Because how we treat people when we think we don't have to respect them says everything. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed because of how you look or where you come from, this story is for you. Remember, stay composed, know your worth, and move with purpose. Because the loudest power move is the one no one sees coming, until it's too late. If this story hit home, don't scroll away, share it. Someone out there needs the reminder.